Back in November 2019, I made a video about a game I was just starting to make. I had 26 weeks to complete it, and as of this video, I'm now on week 20 with 6 weeks remaining. The game in question is a cybersecurity training game I'm building as a final project in my computer science degree. I'm now pretty much ready to send the game out to testers, and this video documents the final few weeks before finishing the game. There's a lot to get into, but before that, this video is sponsored by NordLocker. Use the code BWDEV at nordlocker.net/BWDEV to get 32% off a 1-year plan. So, since the last video, I first got to work on a new interface for the game. As the aim of the game is to defend a network against a series of cyber attacks by placing defenses on a network of connections, this interface allows the player to control how those defenses function. It was easy enough getting the name of the selected node showing in the title, so I got to work on some components. First, I created a slider component, which uses this gradient I'm drawing as the background and adjusts the slider pointer to match the colour. I spent a bit of time adjusting the shapes, but eventually arrived at this, which I think looks pretty cool. So next I made a drop-down component, which took a bit of experimenting to find colours I liked, but I eventually arrived at this. The set of values it displays are dynamic, and easily changed depending on the node the player has selected. I then took a break from that feature to work on a new type of node for the game. Logical nodes can connect to other nodes in the network, but can't be placed on existing connections. To do this, I first added an extra collider to the node template in Unity. This is sensitive to other nodes, and the code I've written for this causes a connection to be created or removed whenever another node collides with this invisible boundary. I created an antivirus node to test this, added it to the game's node list, and this is how it looked. Next, I wanted to create some basic attack visualization. The game already had attacks being simulated, but the output of that could only be expressed as a string of text outputting to the console. I started simple with this, first creating a simple panel to choose which attack I'm simulating, as only one can be shown on the screen at a time. I then programmed the interface to highlight the path of an attack in red. This worked, but it was impossible to tell what way an attack had moved across the network. For some reason, I never considered adding flow arrows before, but this made it a necessity. I made it in white to allow for the colour to easily be adjusted to match the connection in Unity. Next, I created a list to display all the different attacks. The original plan for this was to use it in level building to choose which attacks feature in the level, but that would have been technically impossible. The path of an attack can't be replicated once a player has modified the network. I came up with a better solution to this later on. The result of the list and the arrows ended up looking like this. At this point, the game was starting to feel more like an actual simulation, which was relieving. The deadline has loomed over this project since the start, so any sense of progress is welcome. After that, I went back to the defense control panel which I was building earlier in the video. I needed a component that allows for selecting multiple options like tick boxes. These are created using almost identical code to the dropdowns, using just a boolean true or false value to switch between tick boxes and dropdown lists, as you can see here. It then came to my attention that on increasing screen resolutions, the network would get smaller and smaller. I dread to think what this would look like on 8K monitors. I created a basic camera controller which adjusts its size based on the screen resolution, which called for using an actual ruler to make sure the nodes stayed the same size across different resolutions. It worked, but I never thought I'd need to do that for a computer game. Although determined to finish this project as soon as possible, I ended up spending a weekend with my mum walking in the Peak District near where I live. It was insanely windy, but the fresh air was definitely appreciated. It was hard to come back and think about networks again, but I forced myself back into it. So first came a solution to the choosing attacks problem. Each node has a set of different attacks that can originate there, so I just made a tick box list generate for each node, which allows a level builder to choose what attacks to simulate. Next came my absolute favourite challenge of this whole project. As you can see in this mockup, the level has a sort of greyed out zone around where the core nodes of the network are. My solution to this, having never written a shader before, was of course to write a shader. I started simple, just making little blue blobs get drawn on top of each node before getting a bit too cocky and trying to recreate an effect I've seen once or twice before completely from the top of my head. The effect in question is called isosurfaces or metaballs. It creates these really organic looking shapes which join up and separate similar to a lava lamp. Having seen that, this is what my attempt looked like. So I tried again and it looked like this. So at that point I gave up on trying to wing it and actually looked up the real maths. Turns out other people know this stuff better than I do, and I got that working. I was super happy at this stage as it looked exactly how I imagined. Until I messed it up again. I eventually got that rendering beneath the nodes by adding a separate camera for the effect, and this is how it all looked in the end with everything sorted out. So that's another feature down, now onto level scoring. Each level is assigned a score depending on how well the player does. I got a basic system outputting to the console, just adding up some basic values such as how much budget was remaining and how many threats were defended. I could then link that into the level summary interface I created a while back. I added some new fields to that interface to display an itemized total of the score before creating all the different medal variations the player can receive: bronze, silver, gold, or no medal. I then coded this effect where medals fly onto the interface and the awarded medal is displayed largest in the center. This is just using Unity's lerp function for position on the screen, and the further from the center, the smaller the medal gets. I then made it so the medals reorder depending on position, so the smallest medal always appears under the larger medals. Cyber attacks are also summarized on this interface, with a sentence describing the attack generated based on where an attack starts and ends. Here are a bunch of examples. At that point, I somehow hit 15,000 subscribers. That's 5 times the amount I had a few weeks ago, so I'm honestly in awe at the reception of my last Lumbermill video. I never anticipated that, and I'm super grateful for everyone that's chosen to subscribe and to watch my videos. But despite that, I've gotta finish this game. So, remember the attack simulation I created earlier where the path is highlighted in red? I decided to upgrade that with an actual animation. I started by creating a red outline for the nodes, which swings around the outside when a node is attacked. This is just an image component in Unity filled with the radial option. I didn't feel like finishing that though, so I instead moved on to a level title effect. I wrote an algorithm that creates a set of scrambled versions of some text and linked that to the level title, using a slider to adjust the degree of scrambling. The closer the slider is to 0, the higher the percentage of characters that are scrambled. That was a pretty hefty function to write, but if anyone's interested, here it is. I animated the slider, creating this effect when the level is loaded. I modified the algorithm slightly to include some random characters and animated the text color to go from red to grey, with this being the final effect. The final task before polishing everything up and designing some levels was to finish up the attack animation. This was the effect I created for connections. I then built out an interface for switching between attack animations and the level summary screen. Now, time to show you what the game finally looks like. After a bit of polishing and adjusting, this is how the game will flow. Levels you've completed are shown with their medals on the level selection screen, and you can switch between pages using these buttons. Once you select a level, you can then try completing it. Hit the play button to start the attacks, and if you failed, you're going to see the attacks simulated across your poor network. Once you've seen it all, you'll fly over to the level completion screen, which will give you a medal, and you can start the next level or retry from there. The next level flies in, and you now have a new, slightly trickier challenge to complete. Click the nodes for a description of what each is doing and modify your defenses to improve your security. Aim to get a gold medal in each level and you'll complete the game with flying colours. Being a video all about cybersecurity, it made sense for the sponsor of this video to be NordLocker. NordLocker is file encryption software built by the people who make NordVPN, which makes it super easy to encrypt files. Encryption makes it impossible for anyone to access data they don't have permission to access, and NordLocker makes it as easy as dragging and dropping files into a folder, keeping your data safe. This game is all about encouraging good security practices, and encrypting important files is an excellent place to start. If you share files over the internet, or even carry them on a USB drive, file security is really important, and NordLocker takes encryption and makes it really easy to do, something I can truly appreciate after making this game. You can encrypt up to 2 GB of data for free, and if you use the code BWDEV at nordlocker.net/BWDEV, you get 32% off a year's subscription. Thanks for this video, of course, go to my patrons, in particular Nova, Perpetrolman, Chris Naismith, Gishki, Eshkapivol, Julian, Ismail, Sheshpesh, Phil, Nick, Cameron E, Ethan Hart, Alex, and Nitrex Design. If you'd like to become a patron yourself, the link is in the description. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to subscribe, and I shall see you next time. Cheers for watching.